So good afternoon, good evening, and good morning to all of you around the world. A big welcome back to our followers who have joined the CharIN Tuesdays previously, and of course, as always, our newcomers. This is the second of the 3 EU-focused virtual CharIN Tuesdays of this year's first half, our spring edition, so to say. So today's one is titled Global Cooperation and Standards, the MCS story. We have 2 of our 4 panelists on the call already today. The others will be joining shortly. So let me tell you already a little bit about what the session is today before we can welcome them. So the EU-US Trade and Technology Council has just brought out its joint statement with Megawatt Charging System, the MCS, as a centerpiece thereof, with global discussions regarding common standards in the e-mobility sector, including the combined charging system, also known as CCS, and the ISO 15118. This session will focus on the MCS in light of the EU-US TTC and what has been developed and what we would like to see in the future. And so to say, an EU ... TTC. As CharIN, we were kindly invited to join the EU-US TTC in Luleå as we had developed the parameters for the MCS connector, but Claas will tell you a bit more about that. But first, a big thanks to our colleagues at the European Commission, our host, the Swedish presidency, and not least all those behind the success of the Trade and Technology Council, as well as, of course, the joint statement. So a quick overview about who was there. Of course, apart from who's on the session today, our panelists Saki and Harald and myself, but also European Commission Executive Vice President Valdis Dombrovskis, Executive Vice President Margareta Vestager, Commissioner Thierry Breton, Deputy Prime Minister Sweden, and Minister Ebba Busch, Swedish Ministers Tobias Billström and Johan Forssell, US Secretary of State Antony Blinken, Secretary for Commerce Gina Raimondo, and your US Ambassador and Trade Representative Catherine Tai. So in a nutshell, MCS has been recognized as a key success story by the co-chairs of the US Trade and Technology Council. The recognition of an aligned approach and standardization for MCS through IEC, ISO, and SAE, and of course, very important, ISO 15118 as an agreed common communication interface. And if I may add, and I remember Harald's very, very happy face when he read that the press release of the communication had, the Commission, had included the joint technical recommendations for government-funded implementation of charging infrastructure. So 2 of our speakers already here as mentioned. We'll still wait, but I'll start with you, Saki. Just before, a couple of organizational points. I absolutely encourage questions. I know our panelists do as well, so please put them into the chat box and I'll see to integrate them during our discussion or towards the end of the event. Furthermore, for those unfortunately who are not able to stay the whole session, would like to watch our session over and over again, as I'm sure you would do, there will be a recording made available. I will now introduce our panelists individually and tie each introduction to a question. So, if I may say, Dr. Saki Davite, you're Policy and Data Officer, Alternative Fuel Infrastructure in DG Move at the European Commission. You've joined several sessions until now, so you are quite a familiar face, and obviously we work together on several points, including obviously the MCS, PKIs, ISO 15118, just to name a few. So within that context, what is the EU-US TTC about and what role does it have for the e-mobility sector?
Good afternoon and good morning for those that you are in other parts of the world. Thank you, Glenn, Claas, CharIN community for the invitation of the European Commission. It's a great pleasure for us to be here with you. And also I think it's a very success story, the work we have in the context of industry associations like CharIN with the European Commission. And as some of you know, the Trade and Technology Council, it was born a couple of years due to the visit of the President Biden to Brussels, to President von der Leyen, and it arose from the need to develop a sound and a clear technological and trade cooperation between the United States and Europe, also to export globally our way of understanding the technology and the trade cooperation. And within that alignment, within that Trade and Technology Council, it was decided to define a list of elements, and from the European Commission, particularly DG Move, we proposed the topic on the Megawatt Charging System, due of course to the moment which occurred because we were in the current impact assessment of our new alternative fuels infrastructure regulation. And just to put a bit on context for everyone, the importance, I mean, if you know, for the passenger vehicles market, from the European Commission, those we are here in Brussels, we receive a lot of, let's say, suggestions or calls of expression that show the problem about having multiple connectors that were located in different parts of the vehicle, and everyone was asking us, and when I say everyone, I mean industry stakeholders from all types, OEM, CPOs, but also citizens that were telling us, look, we have to find a solution, we need a single connector, we send the same technological solution. So that's what led us to propose that cooperation with the US. That now has proved very successful, also I said with the help of you of CharIN colleagues and the whole industry, in order to harmonize that in an international standard. And this is important. We have a global standard, not just European, but global. And we are very happy just to conclude, I mean, this is a big success of the EU, of Europe, that we are taking now to the US and to other parts. We see other type of news for other type of connectors, etc. more recently, but we are very happy because we are building something robust in Europe. And I think this is the way to continue forward, and very happy also to make this a bit success story that help us also to address other challenges that we will have in the coming times.
Thank you very much, Saki. And I see Harald has joined us. We've managed to get the GoToMeeting working. That's great. Harald, you're senior scientist at the DG Joint Research Center of the European Commission. It's also not the first time that you've joined us in our CharIN Tuesdays. Let me ask you, do you see the EU-US TTC joint statement as a success?
I do because not only there was this principal agreement on the megawatt charging standard to be followed and now further optimized in all its sub-aspects of testability and certificability and so on. But we also had a success in the TTC with regard to Working Group 2, which is clean tech. And there we were able to publish, and being directly cited also in the joint declaration of the principles, our new booklet, Recommendations for Charging Infrastructure, which is under public funding. And in this booklet, together with Keith Hardy from the Argonne National Laboratory, we have summarized essentially a whole lot of already outspoken, clearly formulatable recommendations for those people who are now implementing all those subventions, both in the USA and in Europe, for public charging infrastructure. And therefore, we published this booklet, and it fell on very fruitful ground also with our top politicians. The booklet is actually structured in 3 parts. It takes stock of the current standardization and suggests a standardization strategy together with our colleagues from the USA. And secondly, it identifies more practical recommendations for engineers that may work for mayors or technical offices of urban agglomerations, private companies who want to put charging infrastructure, also slow charging infrastructure, into the public space. And then third and last chapter is recommendations on further pre-normative research, which would then prepare future regulation and also future harmonization with the US. We know from the CCS success story that once the EU and the US go conform, important other market players in the global setup like South Korea are following us, and we are very optimistic that this strategy can be applied again.
Thank you, Harald. I want to go to a little bit more about the the recommendation, so to say, that the joint statements technical recommendation. But before I do that, a quick introduction. Claas Bracklo, you're chair of CharIN, and thank you so much for also being and joining here. You know how the MCS was born, but before I go into that, how do you see the joint statement yourself? How do you perceive it as a success?
Yeah, that is, as Harald mentioned, so that is the further procedure as we did it with CCS, but we did it a bit better because on the passenger car side with CCS. So we made a compromise back then when we decided to have the latch and the one-phase design for US, and so more the three-phase design without latch for Europe. So we agreed on safety on most of components. So we say that is commonly understandable as CCS. But what we learned, so let's make it better to have just one form factor for the MCS story. And that was where CharIN came in. So when we made these CCS1 and CCS2, so we did not have this organization. We have many individual talks to each other. So Harald was already in that discussions as many others, and that was a good compromise. And with having CharIN founded in 2015, so we have the opportunity to have the market players together. So we have learned a lot in the passenger car segment, and we said, let's make it better because we don't have legacy. We don't have any other competing system in the market, and that is a great opportunity because in the passenger vehicles, so we had different technology standards, discussions. Even in Europe, we have had differences, and that is what nobody is interesting to continue with, to have these individual designs with no major advantage amongst the others. And so we came together in 2018. Honestly speaking, a bit driven from the CO2 regulation and our obligation to reduce CO2 impact to the environment. Okay, the one driver is the European CO2 target for 2025, and so okay, let's do it as early as possible because it takes some time to create a standard, and typically if we respect standardization process, it could easily take us 10-12 years to come to a final solution, and that time is not available to go to market to 2025. And the advantage of CharIN was, so you have always some drivers. They were coming from the car OEMs or truck OEMs sitting together, and so we had a great impulse from North America. So we started the activities within CharIN in North America, and that is one of the advantages of CharIN. So we have many branches and operation units all over the world. And so we did it just there, started a task force in North America, and starting with requirements. And so, okay, what is the driver perspective and the needs to market? So we put companies together, operators, fleet operators, technologists, OEMs, and all these industries, standardization bodies as well. We put them all together and invested heavily. If I remember right, so it was more than 1 year to align on requirements, and that is always good, as everybody knows. Put your brain in the preparation phase, and you will save time in the operation phase, and that is what is sometimes discussed as these associations. They are slow, they need so much time, but I think it's worth to spend some time into the requirements alignment, because afterwards it's a technical implementation which can help us all because the base is set. And at those times we have been looking to the market. Is there anything available so to benefit from? And so, okay, so we have these batteries of 600 kilowatt hours. So we need a quick recharging time. We put all that into our machinery, and out of that, so we came to the requirements. We call that Megawatt Charging System, but the specification limits is going to 4.5 megawatt, because if you know you need one, so you need to have plenty of more space in that. And that is against the learning from the CCS system when we started with 50 kilowatts. I remember those times. That is for multi-purpose vehicles in bigger cities. And so I was believing 50 kilowatt is a passenger limit. And what we did right was to specify it for 300, 400, 500 kilowatt charging power. And with that learnings, we started into the MCS requirements phase.
Thank you, Claas. Very good overview of how MCS was born, so to say. And it's really following a a new international or a new international push, and we're hopefully seeing it standardized. We'll get into that set of questions in a second. Harald, you've put the documents into the chat, both the press release and, if I see that correctly, the joint statements recommendations. So for everybody who wants to read a little bit more, you have it online in the chat box.
Yeah, Glenn, I'm not sure everybody can see this. I think I can only send to organizers and panelists. So I think somebody would have to forward it to all your guests today.
Well, I'll tell my team over here to do it. They're on the case. Thank you, Harald.
Yeah. The first link is the joint declaration of the principles of the ministers and the European vice presidents. And the second is our recommendation booklet directly cited therein. But in the joint declaration, you find also the formulation on megawatt charging, of course, which Saki was referring to.
Thank you, Harald. Great. I have to ask you, Saki, rather than looking at only asking about the success level of the joint statement, feel free to say, you cannot give us all the details, but what was the thing that you did not expect to see in the joint statement when you started the negotiations?
The thing that I did not expect to see.
Yes, or maybe several.
Well, several things. No, I mean, when we start this discussion, and it's important, of course, because you're bringing, of course, different policy conceptions, and just to give a bit of understanding here to the audience. So you know that in Europe, when we prescribe standards in legislation, it's directly applicable to the 27 member states. However, this is, for example, a bit different in the United States, where you don't typically have a federal law prescribing or mandating standards. Rather than, it's a bit different system where they tend to trigger, for example, standards with big funding rolling costs, like we know now the Navy Formula program that are putting big billions on the table, and there you have concrete standard requirements. But this does not mean that are applicable to the whole infrastructure in the whole country. So it could create a bit of biases there. So on that basis, when we started the discussion with our counterparts in the US Department of Commerce, of Energy, we learned, of course, about the SAE process. And one of the things that I think it's important to raise from our side on a friendly manner is that we are a bit worried always about the potential divergence from international standardization processes, that those that occur at IEC ISO level, from other more national processes that they are also considered international, but for example, SAE, which indeed we close collaborate with them and so on, but it also generates a bit the uncertainty from the point of view why we need an additional strand that diverges from. Of course, we understand, but when these cases occur like this one, we try to address it like ensuring alignment. That is what we have achieved now. So that's why in the joint statement we have a clear reference that for the physical connector, the ISC and the SAE are fully aligned. So we have the same physical device, the same technical specs, and on that basis we could also agree. And this is very important on a common communication interface. That you know, this has been a bit one of our headaches on how we ensure that not only the physical, but the vehicle and infrastructure can talk on the same language. So this has been, we believe, a big, I would say, changing point also from now on, because I think it paves the way also on how the infrastructure is going to be developed, and we are going to have much more clarity from now on what are our positionings on this. At the same time, as you know, in Europe, and I think this is the base of the free markets, we do not prevent other solutions to be used, and we know other type of connectors, other solutions that could be possible additionally. Any market actor could do so, but I think it's our aim to ensure that everyone has the clarity that there should be one connector. And we believe that, and Claas was mentioning before, alignment in the preparation phase, in early phases, it helps us a lot to overcome issues late on the operation. And this is what we try also to do now from the policy side, from the Commission. We try to anticipate, to promote convergence of standards and protocols on an early phase, because that avoids that later on in a few years we have multiple connectors, multiple solutions that just increment costs. So this is a little bit how we try to anticipate from Brussels.
Thank you, Saki. Harald, I see you're nothing but Claas. I'm going to ask you, as essentially representative of the whole ecosystem of charging, what Saki was saying about allowing other chargers onto the market. I mean, if something like that would happen, how detrimental would that be for the industry? What kind of signal would that send?
Well, the Solomonic solution is, of course, to create a mainstream. Okay, so if for the megawatt charging we have the MCS system, and we serve a future ecosystem on that, so that maximum economy of scale for the industry can be achieved, then we are rather optimistic that other alternative technologies don't necessarily need to be implemented. Who absolutely wants to do so? For example, because there are some specific interests also in Asia to further go on with Xiaomi and etc. Okay, but I mean, we also at a certain moment need to make a very clear statement where we see the harmonized future technology and why we see it to be advantageous and why we are supporting this to achieve the full economies of scale. Let me just remark to the economies of scale one other aspect. It is very important to harmonize the technology itself. So the plug form, the plug definition, the electrophysical base definitions, and so on. But that is not all. That is not all. We need, of course, what luckily is wonderfully under development now with our colleague Dr. Jörg Behrenfänger's development in the TC69, a specific subgroup for a future extension of the IEC 61851, 21.1 and 21.2, which then will also define the electromagnetic compatibility of such megawatt charging systems on either side, on the vehicle side and on the column side. We are looking into aspects like energy efficiency. We are looking into aspects like thermal functionality beyond the purely thermomechanical plug tests, which have already been started at NREL. That is, will such columns delivering up to 2, 3, 4 megawatts be applicable and operatable in large temperature ranges under adverse conditions? And that is exactly where the capacities of the American National Labs and the Joint Research Center are fitting into, to do now very quickly the pre-normative research which enable us to create that ecosystem. Because I can imagine that for a company offering MCS products, it is also very important to know that we have a harmonized fast charging and megawatt fast charging test procedure on either side of the Atlantic that also belongs to the economies of scale, so that you don't have to change that, like Claas has explained it so well. I mean, you have the same plug and you have the same electrotechnology and so on. But then, of course, the next step in economy of scale is also to have to expect the same critical testing on either side of the Atlantic. And I think this makes also a lot of part of the future success of this. And we are now working hard to it. We take the joint declaration in which one phrase also refers to a common transatlantic test procedure. We take that very serious. And that is the task we take home from Lulea. Yeah.
Thank you. Harald, I wanted to get back to you on the testing procedure, but before I do that, Claas, did you want to add something to what Harald said? Obviously, after he agreed so nicely with you.
Yeah. That is my fun in the game, to see how we are all working together, and we need a lot of brain to develop those systems in such a short period. And honestly speaking, if you are going to business, and truck driving and megawatt charging is direct business, so we are all dependent on this delivery change. That is not like the elderly people complaining in their holiday drive with their passenger vehicle based on electrical, so that is really serious. And the opportunity we have is to benefit from the learnings of the CCS system. And so we did not start on a blank sheet, so we know in principle what is to do. So we have our I call that old relationships with the coex in ANL and JRC. So we are already configured as a team, and the only challenge is to continue that, to keep people motivated and incorporate. And that is sometimes a bit difficult because we are in different time zones, some different expectations. But from the pressure side, we all have the same pressure to solve the environmental issues, and that is our motivator and driver. And yeah, it's just to continue a path we already went on, and quality improvement in short time. So that is, from my perspective, the real challenge. Because that is not an ordinary development process to having time, as I mentioned. So in former times, we had 10, 12 years to make the standard mature, to have the time to implement and to make it better. And now we need to do that. And probably later on, we are coming to the discussion. So we have seen the first working prototype in Södertälje. So I've been there 3 weeks ago. So we have seen a running MCS system. So we are coming from 3D printing, prototyping to operations. And the real challenge behind is it's really handling these high amperage in difficult environments, and that is very detailed work to do, and so we are happy to have these labs available who are able to do these tests on both sides. And as I appreciate it, so there is some work share principle between the US and the European guys who is concentrating on what. We started with Enroll on the physical handling, heat dissipation stuff. And so, as Harald mentioned, so we have the EMC technology efficiency with the major competency in Europe. And the challenge is to make use of the shared competency and not to compete that anybody of us has a better knowledge and could do it better. It's more to understand how to join and collaborate on that. And from my perspective, it's on a very, very good path, as we have had these previous experience and not starting on a blank sheet to configuring new teams. It's more the realignment of existing teams and knowledge.
Thank you, Claas. That was actually a very good overview about how these cooperation, the strategic side for testing will take place. Harald, maybe to put it in a more visual sense, how do you see the testing cooperation taking place? How do you see the implementation of the strategy?
Yeah, I see this, in fact, as complementary efforts on either side of the Atlantic. We have to go with the times. We are growing with our challenges. I admit this very, very frankly. We use such political successes, of course, now also to go to our paymasters and say, we need, for example, augmentation of filtered power supply in our pre-normatively working laboratories, both at JRC as also at the national labs. The colleagues do that. At the national labs, I will be happy to see even more collaboration between the budget competing single national labs as well. Because we are turning actually a quite big wheel, and only cooperatively and sharing the burden we will make it. Actually, also for clarification to your audience today, this does by no means intend that then American National Laboratories or the Joint Research Center of the European Commission would be the only testing centers for MCS technology. On the contrary, we will just develop methodologically how this testing could optimally take place, so that it is severe enough to guarantee you the good functionality of the technology under every aspect. But then we will be more than happy to see that the normal certification business is done by the commercial testing labs. That belongs to the ecosystem. That the apparatus industry producing testing devices, measurement devices, and golden test devices, like we did it also in the AC and the CCS DC technology, so that you have always an apparatus available on the market which can simulate an ideal vehicle towards a real column, or which can simulate an ideal column versus a real vehicle. Yeah, so these so-called golden test devices, that all this develops, that belongs to the ecosystem. Yeah, so just to not get us wrong, we see our role only in the beginning, in the methodology development, cooperatively, we have lots of friends amongst the commercial testing labs. We have lots of collaboration partners in the industry who entrust us their prototypes to perform this job. And once it is done, the methodology is agreed, we will be happy to go on to the next technologies.
Thank you very much, Harald. I'm going to jump to you, Saki, because as Harald mentioned, it's not going to be easy. There's a lot of involvement from the industry side that need to facilitate and actually implement the testing procedures. Where do you see the role of policy still in this?
Yeah, that's a good question, Glenn. And indeed, also what Harald was mentioning, I mean, now we have had a big political success, and I think also it serves to materialize all the long efforts, also a lot of discussions we have had with different administrations, with the industry, and now we have to look next. And also from our side, what we see on the one side, and we have the regulatory effect, like for example in Europe, the AFIR, but also in the case of US, these big funding programs like NEVI and etc. So we see, I mean, that this effect has already arrived to the market. We see, I mean, we have seen in the last, I would say, 18 months, a lot of announcements by OEMs, charging point infrastructure, a lot of cooperations, investments, etc. So we are seeing on that basis that there is an alignment now between the policy making and the figures of infrastructure and the volumes of electric vehicles that we see that are finally coming to the market. We have a clear end date that is 2035. And we see in the last, I think, 3-4 years, if everyone sees the trends, the figures, that we are starting to see an exponential adoption. So with that basis, I think that for us, at least from the policy making, we'll have a lot of work to support you guys in the implementation, with testing in this case, with the Gerassis, and our case with upcoming secondary legislation to underpin the standards, to underpin also the data requirements, the information, and this takes us a lot to also to ensure that we have an infrastructure that is a quality infrastructure. So we see still a lot of problems with reliability and some issues that the market and also with our support we need to overtake. So as I said, with this technological layer that we have now, we see a lot of work ahead to support implementation, to support testing, and ultimately to ensure that we ensure an infrastructure that is of high quality. So everyone, even the one that is the most skeptical, this elderly couple that is fearing to take the vehicle, feels comfortable to do the trip from Germany to South Italy in the summer. So I think this is one of our core challenges next year.
Thank you, Saki. This time I'm seeing you nodding, Claas, and smiling. So are you happy to hear what Saki has said? You're muted, Claas.
Yeah, so I love it because that group together, so we are a very good team, and so that is the interaction of politics and industry, and that is at the end the way to success, to align on an early stage. And I do not remember fairly, Saki, but it's almost 4 years. So when we started this early discussion, and already in that stages, we aligned on strategy. And from my personal experience, so what we did with the EU regulation on CCS, that was in 2014, and so that was a message so that time, because nobody was investing, nobody was trusting nothing, everybody was waiting for the next step. And so by having this EU regulation in 2014, so from my guts and feelings, so that was really so the opening the net and caring for trust in industry. And that only works if industry and governmental bodies are working together. So it's not waiting one for the other, or one tries to help the others to achieve the goals. And so we did that much better in the MCS stages. But at the end, we need to keep that, because what I see, so we have fancy, good ideas, bright engineers, and so some are seeing their opportunity to make a bit of incompatibility because it's a better technology probably. And so I think Harald mentioned that. So we need to define the main track. So say, okay, the MCS with this IP communication and with all the learnings from CCS, that is the main track of infrastructure. And if you invest in that, so that is secure. And so that still leaves the door open for any innovation, but we should not put alternatives on the table as we have recently seen with these Ford and Tesla announcement. Oh, I have a wonderful alternative. And alternatives are not really alternatives. Alternatives are disturbing the market. And if there is not a strong need to do that, so we should avoid it. And at the end, we want to save CO2. So that is our major target. And probably a 99% technology approach is always better than to waste a year or bring confusion to the market. And so I would trust on experience we had. We have this small discussion, on the communication protocol. And so I see these major parts, that is an ISO 15111 and IP-based, so we can reuse so many features and functionalities from plug and charge and V2G or whatever. So you can always do it better, but I do not see personally any need to do it immediately. And the trust in the system is more worse than the latest technology. And I think we have to work about that, because we have these proud engineers behind. I'm one of those guys. Everybody is proud of his own idea, and probably sometimes we should go one centimeter back and think, okay, what is our common vision and target, and is it necessary to bring an alternative to the market, and is that really of use for driving technology further, or is it just an optimization of technology?
Thank you, Claas. I've seen that Jorge has joined us from Scania. Jorge, you are Senior Technical Advisor for Scania CBAB, and you were also in Luleå last week. I'm going to ask you to get you up to speed a little bit. What was your impression, and how did you see the joint statement? And then we'll get into the more technical details again, but just to get you up to speed, so to say.
Yes, thank you very much. Do you hear me well?
We do.
Okay, great. So my impression is that there is a movement in both Europe and America, and a realization that best is to have one standard, and there is a movement to push for the MCS, and we need to get this momentum and really try to finish the standards on time, try to promote them in the inclusion in the delegate acts, as we need to have it for the AFIR legislation to be a reality, and also to convince our friends from East to use the MCS in the future too. And my impression that we have the political backup and the willingness to work on this direction. So it was very positive what I see in Luleå. And I think everybody did a good job to visualize and to show what is the vision we all have in this sense. So positive vibes right now. Thank you.
Jorge, thank you very much. That's really glad to hear. I think we should congratulate everyone that was involved, and also thank you to you for bringing the mock-up. It was very useful and absolutely made the difference. I mean, we had ABB and Einreiter as well, who provided their equipment, and the thing was, I also enjoyed seeing everybody with the so to say mock-up we have, the one that I carry around, and everyone seems to like to take a photo of that. But no, thank you to all of you that provided the equipment, and congratulations and thanks to everyone. But before I go into the too many thank yous and everything, there's a question I wanted to ask you, Claas. It's a question that we get asked very often, actually, and I think it's very, very interesting for everybody here. The question of when is the MCS going to be standardized?
Yeah, that is always the question. I would say, so what is the time when the content of the standard is fixed? And so as we see, so we have almost a year after fixed technology to make the standard a standard. And so we are in the final stage. So I assume, so from our schedule, so that we will be ready by mid of next year. So we have different specifications. Now we have the infrastructure side, we have the vehicle side, so we have the system component side and the communication. So there are four parallel streams. So one is more complicated, one is less. And if we put that all together, so that will go to mid of 24, end of 24 to be finalized. And again, back to experience. So I was within the BMW project when we introduced the CCS, and honestly speaking, the standard was not finished when we started to market, but we had a great trust into the finalization, and that is at the end two things. One is waiting for the standard, and so he's impatient, and the others are having pressure for market. Like from the vehicle side. So as I mentioned, so we will launch vehicles in 2025 to fulfill our CO2 demands. And so that will be the interaction and to keep the path in standardization and to trust when the technology is fixed that the paper framework will be done accordingly. And so that will be something between 2024 mid and end of that year. Currently, I see the others. So we have been talking about the transatlantic partnership, but there is a South Asian organization country behind, and it looks like that they try to disturb our activities in standardization, because those parties who are not interested in a global technology and saving to CO2 in a competitive manner, having probably different interests, and so they could disturb a bit this procedure of finalizing document, and there are a couple of weeks there. I'm speaking about the Chinese, to be frankly, by now. We tried our best to put a lot of energy to come together with the Chinese, because we have had no legacy with MCS, so there is no existing market, no existing other solution. So we implemented 2 communication pins to enable the Chinese to do their bloody CAN protocol. So that was our idea to make the family a bit bigger. And what I have learned from those contexts, they are not interested in MCS, they are interested to do something different, and that is a pity for me, so that the family is not as close and technology driven as I expected, and that could shift a bit these standardization framework, but I think we call that sometimes the de facto standard, and so we will rush that through, and probably we will have the final documents a bit later. But that is trust in the final technology specification, and that would lead us from 25 to 2030 to ramp up the technology and market rollout to see 20-30% of those vehicles being in the market till 2030.
Thank you, Claas. And maybe I'll allow to put myself, or you'll allow me to put my 2 cents to it. It is a bit unfortunate when there is a product on the market that has already gotten so much interest, and there is this notion or need to inhibit progress and solutions that give a positive signal to industry just for the sake of one's own product. But I guess that's international politics and international standardization approaches for you.
But honestly speaking, it's speed to market and alignment, and so we have such a great alignment of those companies who are bringing products to market, and so I think we must not admire anybody else. So that is just keeping the speed, caring for technology and quality as we discussed, and launch it accordingly to the CO2 targets, and that will be the driver and not the political discussion in which government somewhere in the world has specific interest, and that has been achieved. So as we have almost the complete truck and supplier industry together on the table with clear interest and market perspective, and that will be the driver, even if there are some turbulences in between.
Of course. Thank you, Claas. Actually, Jorge, a question to you. I mean, you as representative of Scania, but also with a view towards the heavy-duty vehicle market in Sweden being a major, let's say, economic driver. How do you see the uptake taking place there?
Well, actually, the uptake is quite it's going quite fast, because the ambition is to have approximately 140 stations for heavy vehicles to be ready now in September in the whole Sweden, and it is 140. Okay. 350 kilowatts CCS, because we don't have the MCS yet, But the idea is to implement this next year again and upgrade it the year after with MCS. And that's why Scania is launching a CCS truck already this year, and next year a MCS truck. So the initiative was taken by the government, the energy ministry actually, to be more specific, and they are supporting 100% financially these stations, and it will be with the administration of 5 years at least of the ones that are getting this money. And as I told you, it was very quick uptake, and now until September, I hope that this is a reality that we have already 100, more or less 139, I think it is the number, heavy vehicle stations. So Sweden is in the front runner, and when I look at it, I think before 2025, the AFIR requirements will be fulfilled actually.
That's
at
great.
100%. At 100%. Yes.
Saki, I mean, we've heard of certain challenges for a global MCS approach going beyond the US TTC. What other challenges do you see?
Well, one of the challenges is, and perhaps one of the most important we see, is perhaps that's why it's trade tank technology, right? The standardization recently it has been used as a geopolitical tool by certain regions and spheres, and we are seeing that to delay the processes in the standardization process, to try to undermine or try to overtake or ensure the dominance of a technology. On the positive side, and we have seen that in Luleå, at least from DigiMove, Gerassis in the Commission, our hierarchy, our political hierarchy, our commissioners, our cabinets are very well informed about these issues. And as part of also of our tools, of our solutions for the monitoring, our high-level political dialogue also with ISC, ISO, the standardizations organizations, also United Nations, UNED, etc. We are able now to push, to put on the table these issues and try to address them. So I think that's quite positive. On the other side, a big issue that we see and that we have tried to overcome from the policy side is the supply chain, right? We see a lot of delays now in relation to software developments, critical raw material supply. For that, on the Commission, we have recently launched a recent action plan on critical raw materials. I mean, we need sustainable mining, which we believe is possible. We need to balance and diminish dependence with other regions. So I think this is a indirect challenge we will also have to take. And as I said, at the same time, we need to keep also our member states, the industry motivated, but also our member states to maintain the ambition, not have Europe at 2 or 3 different speeds. And I think this is one of the challenges for us. But at least I think if we look overall in the EU, but also in the US, I think there is room also to be optimistic because we are well advanced than other regions in terms of technological solutions and advancements. So I think we have to keep looking ahead and be resilient. But if we manage to overcome these main 2-3 things that we have here and there, we can easily move forward. Yeah.
I would step a bit on that what Saki said. So that is a mining industry, and so that is the next step as we could benefit in the truck industry from the CCS pre-development. So we could be quicker in the MCS definition, and that is the same situation currently with the mining industry. So they are, so as I learned, just the diesel engines stand for 2% of the global CO2, and that industry has a strong interest to get a better CO2 footprint, and so they can easily jump on the first step on MCS, and that is the countries that is Canada, Australia, South America, Chile, and that are those companies who are typically following these transatlantic guidance, I would call that, and that would really spread the technology to those areas, so where the technology is needed, and as long as that is in the free countries or democratic or however call that. So that is the spread of technology by itself, I would say.
Thank you very much, Claas. Harald, as you have a more, let's say, if I may say, technical and testing mind, are there challenges which are hidden that we haven't seen yet?
Well, certainly. I mean, testing has often to do with cost for those people who want to test their prototypes, who want to certify them. if we want to make the technology, once decided, to determinedly go for it, very robust, we need a lot of tests. We need tests not only for the power profile, but also for electromagnetic compatibility, not only for thermal windows, but maybe also for energy efficiency and so on. But as Claas has already mentioned, the parallelization now of the different strings or strands of developing very quickly the necessary accessorial standards, which all would then serve the MCS standard to become integrally a big success. This is exactly our idea, to parallelize these trends. This is one thing, so that if there is a slight delay maybe in one strand, that is not so dramatic, because in general we are bringing it forward under all aspects. So this for testing. Then testing is also costly, and my plea here to the industry would be, if we set everything we have into trust building to make this technology a success, please also trust us when we invite you for pre-normative testing of prototypes, pre-compliance testing, because it is pre-compliance testing which gives us the possibility to optimize the testing procedures in a later standard, which gives us the possibility to minimize the amount of effort which is needed, but not so much that it's then unsafe or so. So we really need to test very, very early, to test prototypes in order to learn what is the minimum necessary we really have to prescribe them for later certification. And my plea here, trust us. We are even offering non-disclosure agreements because understandably companies want to keep their competitive edge. But I mean, give you just one example. We are already in contact now with Dr. Patrick Plötz, a private docent and group leader at the EC Fraunhofer Institute in Germany, and in that position also coordinator of the German HOLA project. There may be many other projects towards MCS in Europe, and our invitation is really take the contact with us, test with us relatively early. Nobody will be blamed for typical learning cycles which are naturally and intrinsically into prototypes. Overcoming this, I'm then optimistic. Now, on the international scale, we'll make it. We are already discussing in the European Commission to make a similar Trade and Technology Council also with India. This will be a completely different ball game. Completely different because all the framework conditions are completely different as compared to America, of course. Technologies will be different, the needs of India are completely different, and so on. But nevertheless, your experts will be sitting there, and we will put, of course, the focus on the same goal. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Harald. I've got here a couple of questions, so to say, to allow for a bit more of a involvement of the audience. I'll start with the first one. It is brilliant that the MCS standard seems to have a global uptake, so congratulations with that. Little pat on our back there, I see. That seems not to be the case for CCS in the US, and the US seems to pursue other routes at the moment. This is something that we've discussed, Claas, but of course, yeah, I'll let you respond to that. As these MCS covers, so here's the actual questions. MCS covers charging power down to 350 kilowatts. Would you see this as a means to standardize also at these power rates? So I guess the question means, can we use MCS to look at what CCS covers?
We can do that, but that is an economic question. So that is very rarely to have this design, because that is a big form factor, so that costs more than a CCS. And so I don't see that is going too much down. It could be done, but I currently can't see what the benefit is. So I would think we can see a parallel integration of CCS and MCS to make use of both charging technologies if you have less power needs. So it's mainly better to go to a cheaper charging arena, which is just offering less power. And so we see that already in the passenger arena. So to get high power means the invest is higher and the kilowatt hour costs more. So, but never say never. It could go to that stage if we have broader market penetration. From technology, it's not an issue, but I think from the commercial side, it's probably dedicated to those vehicles who are really needing that power, and the others could live easily with CCS, as CCS development never stops. So we are discussing as well to ramp up the amperage of the CCS system a bit higher. And so probably that can be covered by CCS in that range better.
Thank you, Claas. Of course,
I would like to add something there, okay? Yes. Yeah, for heavy vehicles, we only think MCS is the solution. So we are now launching a CCS truck, yes, but it's because we don't have MCS standards ready, but then it is MCS. And even though for overnight charging, it should be MCS. Robustness, reliability, security, and it is designed for the huge battery capacity that we have there. And it will be increased, of course, the battery capacity. So we only promote MCS for the future. That is what we need to aim, regardless the power level of the charging.
Thank you, Jorge. All three are nodding, and I'm in agreement in case you didn't see. Harald, go for it.
Yeah, very quickly, without dedicating too much time to the very first question, but it's an interesting question. There have been fantasies, for example, with colleagues in DG Research. Yes, but let's look at this power range, only 200 kilowatt to, let's say, 400 kilowatt, and then an MCS column on the Sunday at the highway station could also serve when there are no trucks, whatever, 3 passenger cars. And so, folks, first things first, as the English say. I think what we are propagating at the moment is, as Jorge said, we need it for the really big trucks. And we are in unison with the Society of Automotive Engineers that we see a lot of potential for the economy of scale, extending it from day number 1 also to not only mining machines, but also inland shipping, coastal ferry boats, in America, even locomotives, where they would like to get rid of diesel engines, but they, for various reasons, they don't want to electrify the tracks. So there is the big economy of scale. The rest is, for me, the cherry on the cake. It's not needed now immediately. It's not the decisive thing, and it has a risk to delay, as Claas explained beforehand. So okay, such ideas can be followed as a competitive edge for some specialized companies or whatever. Nothing excludes it technologically or electrophysically, but on the other hand, let's now really take the main thrust, and that is really megawatt charging, in my view. Thank you.
Loud and clear message. Saki, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, very short. I think it's a very relevant question, and just to mention what Jorge summarized very well, I mean, we see it also clearly. All trucks, there should not be hesitation. That should be MCS for all power levels, because the discussion you will face, and also some planning developers in the regions are asking us, do you really need MCS for all situations. So, I mean, because when you have the 10T and later they have depot charging, do I really need a megawatt charging when I'm 50 kilometers after the 10T to the, well, I mean, that's also what Harald said is the cherry on the cake. Our first message is that all tracks are MCS, and later the planning developers, I mean, we will see what is the powers amount, but I think that's something we need to let clear. So it's a very relevant question that we need a clear message. It's all MCS, and we will see the exact power levels that are needed in each point.
Thank you very much, Saki. Actually, I've got an existentialist question that has just come up. And this is something that you've also touched upon, Claas, but I'll leave it up to you to say who wants to answer this one. So what is covered by MCS, the scope of this discussion? On the one hand, China was offered to use their CAN protocol. On the other hand, even within MCS, different physical layers such as differential PLC, 10-base T1S, CAN XL, ... are discussed. So here in the existential part, what makes MCS MCS? The connector?
Yeah, that is the connector shape is the mechanics and the functionality behind, and that is the asset from my perspective, to have all these features, security, cyber security, and all that stuff behind, and that makes MCS as a specific derivative of these CCS family approach, and so not to invent anything new. And that is for the Chinese ideas, so they are elaborating everything to make everything new. And so we continue in principle the path of CCS and just creating a connector which is able to carry the higher amperage and kilowatts. And that makes MCS a part of the CCS family.
Thank you, Claas. Harald, Saki, or Jorge, want to add something, or should I go on to the next question?
Saki, do you want to comment?
No, I'm fine. Yeah.
Technically, I'd like to add that if you read these recommendations Dr. Kees Hardy from ANL and myself have written, you will see a recommended preference for ISO 15118 at all power levels, full stop. Okay, and this is also now in the Federal Highway Administration rules. This is now a ruling for the 5 billion of the Navy program. And there you have it. The federal government of the United States supports the priority of ISO 15118. Okay, so this is quite a statement we got from them. And it has been achieved by building up trust with them over many months and conviction work, which is also work. Yeah, I know there are always partisan interests and diverging interests and so on. The world is interesting because it's colorful, but this is also a very clear statement, at least at the federal level, also in the USA, and therefore we feel actually confirmed in our preference of ISO 15118 so far, protruded also in Europe. Thank you.
Thank you, Harald. All right, the third question. Actually, it's directed at Scania and politely also says another in the panel, of course. A little bit of a challenge. I think this one should be relatively easy to answer. A means to provide high power charging and reduce the required power in each cable could be to offer dual port charging. So 2 different cables, one each side of the vehicle. Would Scania consider such an approach in order to achieve the above? Perhaps 250 to 300 amps per cable, so that cooling would not be needed?
Yes, I think there are some solutions we have seen from some competitors, but we have chosen that is CCS solutions, yeah, and CCS is not robust enough. Simple as that. It's not secure enough. It is not robust enough for the amount of battery energy that we are going to storage in those batteries. It's not enough. We need to have certainty that what we are doing is safe. We need to have certainty what we when we are charging is going to continue charging the whole night. You know, we need to be certain that the systems are designed for the 10 times more than the car energy capacity that we are going to have in the track. So it is existing, those solutions. They are CCS, but well, in this case, it is MCS to go. And then once you have MCS system, why you have to split it? Likewise, go for the Megawatt system, because once you have it, then it is enough with one plug. So I'm not saying it's not impossible to do it. I mean, it is possible, but the cost effectively and safety and robustness has to be also evaluated in this case. Yeah.
Right.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Does anybody else want to add to that? I mean, not about Scania's intentions, but the viability of the alternative solution. No. I mean, from my side as well, I mean, if we look at putting cables on each side of the vehicle, as the question implies, there's also standardization about the side of the vehicle when we're also looking towards the future, automated charging and so on and so forth. But voila, I see we all agree on that point. I want to go back a little bit to the global MCS rollout. The challenges. We've seen about what the challenges are, but how is industry going to be able to help Claas? What can we do to make sure MCS is a global, not phenomenon, but global normality?
Yeah, I would say it already is, because we don't have any alternative, and so wherever we are looking for, so I'm always wondering how many ideas the Chinese are offering, and they don't come out of their niche and discussion frame. And as I mentioned before, it's time and speed to market. So we have this bunch of supplier industry. So we have enough charger manufacturers who have their prototypes. So we have cables, we have contactors, we have a lot of competition in that. So the end customer has a choice to do that. And for me, it's just continue the path, work together as we are used to, and so that will be become the global standard. So I talked about this mining stuff, and so if we are going to India and Korea and the next country, so it's just an implementation game. And if there's any government in the world intending to do something different, so we can't hinder that. But all countries and all industry are global players in principle, and so we will see, as we have all the Chinese are doing CCS for global markets, so I'm sure they will MCS for the global markets if they are interested in export. And so that is nothing new, and it's not a big fight to do. So I think the biggest fight we did was in Luleå, and to have this alignment, the documents and structure, and so that will guide the market as we did it with CCS as well.
Thank you, Claas. Saki, from the policy side, what would you need from industry?
Well, what we were discussing before, I mean, I think we have a very well-aligned strategy and approach. We know how to listen to each other and how to support each other. We have to continue that. Also, what we are doing a bit here, you know, we have to voice the challenges and also how we can support each other. For example, in the standardization, we have our high-level political sphere very well updated on that. So we will press the relevant buttons to make when the moment occurs that we can steer here or there. And at the same time, of course, we will continue supporting implementation, testing wherever we can. We also want to recall that we have our Connect in Europe facility with rolling calls for supporting the deployment of charging infrastructure. Also, for example, OPS, onshore power supply for electric vessels, etc. So we'll continue making funding available, also with research projects, Horizon Europe. So we do the most we can, and indeed very, very keen also to keep this fluid, very fluid and trustful dialogue, and now how we can move towards the next steps there.
Thank you, Saki. Harald, I'll ask you the same question. I mean, you mentioned testing facilities, testing capacities, testing strategies. Anything else?
Well, I mean, we can only prepare you a very good playing field, okay? We can cut the grass perfectly. We can fertilize the grass. We can give you the best ball we found. We give you the we hire you the best referee and so on. But in the end of the day, the game you industry have to play in a way. I mean, we are continuously testing energy efficiency of fast chargers, CCS fast chargers primarily. And just maybe as one tangible example, even if from time to time, with a bit of experience and diplomatic fortune, we are still managing to keep up with this Western predominance in such global questions in a globalized market. Fair enough. But please do not underestimate our colleagues from the People's Republic of China, for example, who are, when it comes, for example, to modularity, cleverly steered modularity of the inverter modules in high power charging columns, are very well positioned. Very well positioned. I don't want to make names now. I keep to my NDAs. I don't want to make direct comparisons now, but they are very well positioned. So when it comes, for example, to modularity of inverter modules being cleverly steered to follow the various power request levels of different vehicles, and then within one vehicle's charging process, the changing power in function of the SOC. Please consider that it is not only Europeans or Americans which can make very good technology. Meanwhile, it's also many other countries. So, as I say, the quality of the game in the end of the day has to be now delivered also by the industry itself. This is something we can observe, we can measure, we can report to you, we can help you wherever we can, but in the end of the day, that's your game to play. Thank you.
Thank you, Harald. We've reached essentially the end of the session, but I can never let go of my one rule that I've developed over the time, that one or two sentences of the last message you want us, our listeners, to take home. Jorge, I'll let you start.
Okay, I would like to add something in reference to the question we got before. And I can say, take for example, it is not two sentences, sorry, Glenn, but it is, take for example, the short circuit test requirements for the CCS, all right? It is only written until 200 amps, then nothing else. In the vehicles, we already have 500 amps. So we need to go to MCS. There it is written exactly what to do, the test procedures and so on. Otherwise, each vehicle manufacturer is inventing its own test procedure and guessing what will be best to comply with. And that is the big difference. MCS, it is done for the high amps that we are going to use, for the big battery storage we are going to use, and forget about CCS for this in the future. I am quite frankly telling you this because, yeah, if you go in and look at all the requirements, all the standards, then you will see there is a big difference. And this is the big difference we want to promote. And it's difficult to say in a few minutes, but I'm just giving you a hint. Go and check short circuit requirements, for example. So my last words is, let's work for MCS and make it a reality. And in 3 more years, we have this in all the tracks that are being launched, and we have an infrastructure that we can go and charge. Thank you.
Jorge, I think that was 2 sentences, but very clever use of semicolons. Saki, your turn.
Yeah, okay. So I will use a bit of an analogy that we were discussing now of the football. Also, I'm a very big football supporter from Real Madrid, and also, you know, it's not enough to win and score goals, but you also have to play well, no? So I think in Europe and in this country we have to do a bit the same. So we have all the means, we have the players, good bench, a stadium, we have all. So we need now to continue this level of playing. We need to continue supporting each other and make it this global scale up and transmit to the outside world, outside Europe. In it our technology, our solutions, our values. So if we continue doing that, it will certainly go well for us. Yep.
Thank you, Saki. Harald, your turn.
Phrases. Well, there was the last century, the German writer Erich Kästner, who said, "Es gibt nichts Gutes, außer man tut es." There is no good except you do. And this is my message to you. Now, we haven't won the war. We have not even won the battle. What we want for you is another chance. And now, please take your chance.
Thank you very much, Harald. Claas, you essentially as being the host of today.
Yeah.
Please.
It is keep on track. So we are on a good way, and typically sometimes there is a wave and some news are coming up, and really make it ready, continue to bring it to market, and for those companies who are in standardization bodies, so they have to fight for that. There is no delay within that, and that is not done by itself. So we agreed in industry. Sometimes the standardization people are a bit different, but we have to align all these forces to make it ready and keep on track and to close the small gaps we still have in some specifications. And yeah, that is, don't lose the traction by any disturbances. And please, nobody should disturb the principle by saying I have a wonderful new idea to doing that, but we need to solve CO2 issues by 25.
Thank you very much, Claas. Our message is loud and clear, and thank you as well for hosting us. Just a quick look at the upcoming events, if I may still take 30 seconds of your time. We have quite a heavy schedule coming up these months. Well, not only, so we have part 3 of the CharIN Tuesday Europe Triplet of the spring edition, so to say, data exchange driver of the charging ecosystem. This is nothing new to many of you. Saki, Harald, this is bread and butter and many of the things that are going on in the Sustainable Transport Forum subgroups. And as many of you know, we have a special subgroup within CharIN dealing with this, looking at use cases and going into details as far as what standards and protocols are being used for the transfer of the data and also how it's stored, etc., etc. Can I have the next slide, please? We have next week the EVS 30s, EVS in Sacramento on June 11th to 14th. I hope to see all of you there. Claas, I know you'll be there. We will also have from the 14th to the 16th the Green Tech Festival in Berlin, so back to back. And you can find further details of both these events on our CharIN website. Can I have the next slide, please? And then CharIN Academy training, something that is very much a pillar of CharIN, how to design your own DC charging system. I think this is something for all ages, or the geniuses, the young geniuses, and those with experienced knowledge. There will be a focus on the US market, and you can see exactly what this will cover, and it will be an in-person training session during the June 14th Sacramento EVS. So for those of you who are there, would be delighted to welcome you as well. On that note, thank you very much to all the speakers for joining today. Jorge, thank you. Even though we didn't get to see you, if you want to see what Jorge looks like, just check the website. There's a picture of him, or he's very popular on Google. Was very delighted to welcome you all. The subject is very interesting, and congratulations again to everybody for the successful EU-US TTC, and yeah, keep going onwards and upwards, as they say. Thank you, and all the best also to our listeners.